For this session, we'll be going over memory mates, pretty much leaving or picking up from where we left off with session 2, how to build memory mates or how to create memory mates if you already have a template set up. And after that, we'll be going into the layout designer over the basics. And then finally, we're going to create a memory mate template from scratch and then run that. I tried to keep these videos a little bit shorter this time. So I think it was 10 minutes and then 13 and 14, because I know the longer videos, the attention span wasn't there. So in the videos, I do speed frame or time lapse through when it's building. But if you're following along, just let your computer catch up while I'm talking after that about what it builds. So can you hear me, Alyssa?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So in any case, we're going to go into the first training session. So the first lesson, go ahead and play that, Alyssa, if you would.
Yep.
And then we'll do question and answer after this so we can answer questions about it.
Okay.
This lesson, we'll be discussing creating memory mates with Easy Composites. When you run Easy Composites, the procedure to build memory mates is pretty much the same as what you learned in webinar session 2 with just building standard composites. Really, the main difference in memory mates is just how the templates are set up. With Easy Composites, it really doesn't care where the image slots are located or the size of those image slots. The only thing that the plugin is doing is looking for image slot numbers to put images into. So for a memory mate, how that is in this lesson, we'll be discussing creating memory mates with Easy Composites. When you run Easy Composites, the procedure to build memory mates is pretty much the same as what you learned in webinar session 2 with just building standard composites. Really, the main difference in memory mates is just how the templates are set up. With Easy Composites, it really doesn't care where the image slots are located or the size of those image slots. The only thing that the plugin is doing is looking for image slot numbers to put images into. So for a memory mate, how that is accomplished is slot 1 is created differently than the other slots. So in this example, this larger image slot is slot 1. And then the first row starts with slot 2, 3, and then it goes on from there. So really, as far as the plugin is concerned, it doesn't know any difference with how the templates are set up other than it's looking for, like I said, the slot numbers. The one thing the memory mate mode will do, though, is it will rotate every image through slot 1. So when you run that, it's going to take each student and the teacher as well, if you have a teacher in there, but it's going to put those images into slot 1. Then it will move the next one into slot 1 and build another copy. Let's just run a quick build here and then we'll discuss it. So as far as running to build the memory mates, it's the same exact way. So we'll select the folder of the images. And I'm just going to use the same files that we used in training session 2. Now you can build memory mates for multiple classes if you want with the datasheet. In this example, I'm just going to build one class. So I'm using the folder that's separated by class here and just select one of those classes. And then, of course, we'll need to select a template. And then we'll need to select the memory mate mode. It's just a little checkbox there. Now, when you select the memory mate mode, you will also have to select a save folder, because whenever you run memory mates, it is batching because it's building multiple files. It has to build a separate memory mate for every student. So select our folder here. And now with memory mate mode, you don't have to use a data file. You can, if you have the student's name by file name, you can use this as well. So I'll demonstrate both here just so you can see the difference, because there is one thing you need to do if you're using the file names. So I'm just going to hit build here. All right, so you see it's pulled the template up and it's just stopped for us here. You can see this is slot 1 and then it starts with slot 2 here. The reason it's doing this for memory mates is because you've got in the templates the area for your text. So if you're running memory mates and you don't have a data file to set this text, you're going to want to do this right now. For instance, you would put in your school name and you would fill out each of your text items. And the reason why you want to do this now is because once you hit continue, it's going to use all of this same template setup for every single memory mate it completes. That way you don't have to enter that information in 13 times. So in this example, once I'm done with filling out this and I hit continue, it's going to build a memory mate for all 13 students, and it's going to keep this text that I enter. I'm just going to actually cancel this right now because I want to also show you that with the memory mates, you can, if you want, use your text file. And let me find this. And this is the same file that we use in webinar session 2. There is no difference at all in the data file setup for memory mates. Everything still works the same. And if you're putting a teacher into the design and you want that teacher to be before all the other students, put force order 1 still in there. And with memory mates, force order 1 does not mean the teacher always ends up in slot 1. When it's running the memory mates, it will put each student into slot 1 when it runs, so the teacher actually gets forced back to slot 2 for all the memory mates except for the one where the teacher is in the rotation for slot 1. It'll make more sense when we build this here. So I've got that. I'm just going to hit build. Okay, so the same thing when you're using the data file, it still stops for you here because if there are other template changes you want to make to the graphics or whatever, you would do that right now before it builds the rest of them. Let's just hit continue because you see it did pull in that text already for us from the data file, so we don't have to do that here. All right, that's finished here. Let's go take a look at our finished files. So if I scroll through these, you can see that here's the first one it created with the teacher, but if I go to the next one, it took that image that was in slot 1 or in slot 2 and put it into the featured slot here. And the teacher ends up as the first slot. And you can see the teacher is staying in the first, or actually the second slot, but the first slot for the grid of images here. And then as I go through, it rotates each of the students through the memory mate, but it maintains the alphabetical order of the students with the exception of the teacher, which we did the force order in the CSV. Also, I will point out too, let's go back to the files here. If you are not using a data file for memory mates, it's still going to batch and build them all for that class. And if you have that 1 in front of the teacher's name in the file name, it will keep that teacher in front of the rest of the students. But if you're using a data sheet, you have to use the force order column in order to do that. It's pretty simple here. Like I say, nothing much different. I will show you one more thing here. You can also run batch mode and memory mate mode together. And if you do that, you would select the folder that has all of the images combined. You can't see the images here because this is we're on a Windows system and a folder selection menu is not showing them, but that folder has all of the images for the 3 classes in there. And then when running a full batch mode, it doesn't actually stop and allow us to change the template. So you got to make sure that the template is set up 100% correctly as you want. But you can see current group 1 of 3. It's going to make a memory mate for every student for every single class. All right, that's finished. So let's just take a look at the files. All right, so you can see that we've got Miss Walker's class here, and when that class ends, it goes to the next class, and it builds all of the memory mates for that class. Can you hear me, Alyssa?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Well, my webcam is not
Okay.
working, so you guys are just going to have to listen to me. We'll just have to work through the technical difficulties here. I don't know, Max. In any case, we just put in a product offer as FYI for a new template that Alyssa just built called Doodles. It's pretty awesome template. You can get it for $15 through the end of the weekend. It's hand-drawn vectors in the template. These are not AI created, infinitely scalable, a cool design for preschool and kindergarten and that sort of thing. Also, if you have any questions, be sure to post those because we can answer any questions. I can go live in Photoshop and answer any questions that you have. Don't see any questions yet, but I know that there is a delay of about 10 seconds. So the video finished a little later for everybody than it did for us. Here we go. Can you determine how the files are named on completion? So for the memory mates, we're going to name the files with the name of the student file name. Honestly, can't remember if it puts a HIM extension on that or not. But no, you can't force it. Trying to think if I think I had that to where I was going to put that in as like in SPA where there's a file name option in the CSV. If I don't think I've got that in there yet, but I may. I can't remember. It was on the list. So as of now, I don't think so, but it may be in the future if it's not. So that would be on an update. I think I had easy comp on the end. Wonder if that could be customized. Like I say, no, not at this time, I don't believe. Like I say, it was on my to-do list. I just can't remember for 100% if I've done that. I don't think I have. But if not, it will be in a future release on the
and it would be in the CSV file the same way that SPA works, where you can specify the file name in a column. But I've got that written down. I'll look into that after the webinar and see. But like I said, I don't believe it's done yet. Any other questions anybody has? I guess it was must be pretty straightforward. So the next one, I'm assuming there is going to be questions on, because it's a little more involved than just running. So we're going to go into the layout designer. If you have any questions while you're watching the video, go ahead and post those. You can try to follow along in Photoshop if you want, or you can just watch. But yeah, post in the chat, and then what we can answer during the video or after. So go ahead and play video 2, Alyssa.
Alrighty.
In this lesson, we'll be discussing the layout designer for Easy Composites. And the layout designer is used to create the layout files for your templates. And if you remember, the template files or the templates consist of multiple template files, so it knows how to arrange your layout based on the number of images you're given it when it runs. So the layout designer will make one of those PSD layout files, but if your template has multiple layout files needed, you'll need to build multiple PSDs with this. So just keep that in mind. I'm not going to be covering everything in a ton of detail here, because we don't really have time in the webinar to go over fine details for everything. I do have videos on the website that go into a lot of detail for every one of these. So I'm just going to give a quick overview, and then we can discuss with some questions and answers afterwards. So the composite width and height, that's pretty simple. That is the width and height of your the entire composite. You can make that whatever you want. Like I've seen some people request 12 by 8. Well, you can do that. I mean, whatever you want to make this is up to you. Now, this always does 300 pixels per inch. When making 8 by 10s, I like to make 20 by 16. That way it's twice as big, because you can always size down to print and not lose quality. You can't really size up. So if you make it 8 by 10 and you print 20 by 16, it's going to be lower quality. So, but that's up to you how you want to do that. Now, the images ratio, this is not the ratio of the composite. This is the ratio of the individual image slots. So the slot 1, slot 2, slot 3, that sets the ratio of those slots. For these, you can only choose 4 by 5 or 5 by 7. The plugin can actually run with templates that are set up with different aspect ratios. Like, for example, our Polaroid template that we have, that's set up with a 1:1 aspect ratio. However, the layout designer just can't build those. So for those kind of templates, those need done all manually in Photoshop. I know people have asked about that, but it's just too complicated to make a layout designer that's going to do anything and everything. So I had to give it some parameters, and this is what it has. The edge margins, this is where it fits all of the image slots into. So there's different widths for the margins, and then you can also set custom. And where you see these Photoshop guides, that is the margins. And when it builds the layout, it's going to put those guides for you so you can see where your margins are, and it's going to fit all the slots within those margins. The min slot spacing and min row spacing, this defines how close the images can be together and how close the rows can be together. It doesn't force them to those exact spacing, because it still has to spread the images out to your margins. So in this case, the rows are a little bit wider because it had to space these 4 rows out to get to where the margins are. It's a little bit more complicated to explain these. I've got a video on the website that goes into a lot of detail. That's probably the most complicated thing to understand are these two. But just know that it always fits all of your images to spread out to your margins. So if you wanted these rows closer together with this layout, you'd have to push this top and bottom margin up and down with the custom margins in order to reduce that row width here. Okay, the stroke width, that is just the width of this stroke here. Just gives you a few options. And anything where you see where you're not given it an actual number, that's because it is going to change the actual number of pixels based on how large the template is. So that way, if you're using like a stroke width of normal, that's going to look the same whether you're 8 by 10 or 20 by 16. Whereas if I made this to where I had an actual pixel value to put in, that would look smaller on a 2016 versus an 8 by 10. That's why I just used the t-shirt sizing, I call it, normal, large, extra large, or normal, wide, extra wide in that case. That way you don't have to do any math. So the text layers, that is the these text layers that are under the individual slots. If you do first comma last, it puts the first name above the last name into two text items. If you do full name, which is what this is here, it puts the full name onto one row. And full name on and then text will give you the full name on one row, and then an additional text item, which you can add in data in your CSV for that additional text item, or none. You can have it to where there's no text. Corners, that's just the corners on your image slots, just your rounded, square, oval, or beveled. Empty columns, we'll just leave an empty column. So if your margin is here and you tell it 2 empty columns, it'll leave this extra gap. There are use cases for that, but I don't want to discuss that in this video. Starting slot, that's the number you want to start with. It's usually 1, but if you're doing a memory mate, you'd start with 2 and then build a larger slot, which we'll do in the second video. And then number of rows, this is just the number of rows you have, and then you can define how many per row. We could add more rows, for example. We'll just build one with 4 rows here. Let's just give it something different to do that. I don't know, something like that. I'm just going to now hit build. Oh, one thing I'll point out too is once you get your rows and where you want the number of images slots per row, I suggest not just hitting create layout, because that'll take a while, and if it's not right, then you'll have to go redo it. So the first thing I like to do is look at these numbers. This is telling us how it's going to build. So your margins, it's 1 inch around on each side, which would be the same as if it was 1/2 inch on 8 by 10, but we're 16 by 20. So you see that this is a 1 inch margin here. And then your spacing, this is going to be 0.13 inches between the slots and 0.75 inches between the rows. And if we thought that that was too much on the row, if you notice, if we reduce our row spacing, this doesn't change. Whichever one it's using here on the spacing is the one that's green. The reason it can't get the rows closer together is because it's already, the slots are already too close. If it would have to make the images bigger to fit them closer together. And if it did that, it would overlap left and right. So the only other way to make them closer together would be to change your margins. Actually, just to do it, since we're here, we might as well, so I can try to maybe sort of explain this. So let's go 1.5 top, 1.5 bottom. Now you see it's moved this row a little bit closer. I don't know, somewhere in there. I'm just going to hit build and then we can discuss it. Or actually, before we do that, I suggest hitting create layout preview. Sorry. The layout preview is going to give you a very quick representation of the layout. And this rectangle that you see for each image, that is the image slot plus the text. That's the entire area this entire slot's going to take up from the bottom of the text to the top of the image. So I like that. I'm just going to hit create layout. And now it's going to create the actual layout. All right, so when it builds your layout here, it's always going to start on the left-hand side in your margins. You see it's fit the margins in. Let's compare this to the standard layout that had rows of 8 here. You can see that's got more gaps than we have here because we pushed those margins down, which pushed those rows closer together. I do suggest watching the video for the slot spacing and row spacing. As much as I want to try to dive into that now, it's a little bit complicated and it'll take too much time. But so it built, like I say, it builds them with the rows left aligned, but you can move those around however you want. So if we wanted to center those, we would go into the move tool and then make sure that you have your canvas selected, and then it will allow you to center the rows. So to do that, grab the entire row folder and then just center the rows. So you could center them all like that. However, if you didn't want this, let's say you wanted a space in the middle, you could take 2 of your slots. And when you take your slots, grab the whole image folder for the slots. And make sure your auto select is not checked if you're moving multiple slots. If it is, as soon as you click, it's going to deselect one of those and select just a single layer. I don't think I have my snap turned on. But you can turn your snapping on so that way it snaps into place. Although sometimes I found that the snap doesn't work quite right with your stroke, so you have to zoom in and see. Sometimes it'll snap the edge of your image to the edge of the stroke on the other image. All right, pretty easy. I will point out one last thing. I know that a lot of times people will build a design and then want to knock some images out of the middle. So let's say say you deleted 3 because you wanted to open up a space to put some graphics or whatever. If you do that, you will have to reorder your image slots because your layout files cannot have skipping numbers. It has to always start with number 1 and it can't skip numbers. So in this case, it skips from 14 to 18. So if you go out of the layout designer back to the home menu, there is, if you've knocked some slots out there, there's a renumber image slots. You'll just select that and run that, and it's going to renumber all the slots that need renumbered. So now you see when it went up to 24, it went from 14 to 18. Now it goes 14 to 15 and up to 21. When you save your layout file, you need to make sure it ends in the proper naming for the templates. So the one that was 24 would be easycomp-024. The one that's 21, when we name this, the end of the file name would have to be easycomp, all caps, -021. And that's how the plugin knows which file to use when it's building the composites. I know that was a lot of information I tried to cram into a pretty short amount of time. I'll open it up for question and answers now, and I can answer any questions you have.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Can you hear me, Alyssa?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Okay, so in case anybody was ever wondering if we're live, well, all you had to do is watch the replay. And see my video issues. So I think I got my webcam back, my audio back, so we should be good. There was one question in the chat. It said if I use full name and text, but the CSV, there is only text for a particular slot, does it just leave a blank? I'll go to my screen share here. Short answer is yes. So that's exactly what this template, how this is done. In this case, this is got slots 1 and 2 in the middle, and those have an extra text layer, teacher and principal here. The rest of them don't. In this case, the template was saved with those in here where the other slots only have the single text layer. However, if your slots have if all your slots have the text layer, it'll hide that text layer. So you're not going to see the default X's. But you will end up potentially with more gaps because, for example, if you're building a template and you're putting those extra text items for all of your layers, it's going to be more of a gap with that extra text layer in here. So what you probably need to do in that case is build them closer together, knowing those are going to hide, or add those in manually on the slots that you want it for. In any case, there's options there, but you don't have to use all one way or the other. You can mix and match as you see here. Okay. If I have around 200 people in my composite and want to print a 30 by 40 inch, how should I size it? I mean, 40 inch at 300 pixels per inch would be 12,000 pixels. I mean, it will build it if you want 300 pixels per inch. In the plugin, it always builds it at 300 ppi. If you know that you would be happy with 150 ppi at 40 inches, you could build it 20 inches at 300 pixels per inch and get the same dimensions. And then I'll just show you. Let's screen share here. This is probably a good topic to do. I'm not going to build the whole layout. I'm just going to do a preview. So let's say you wanted 40 by 32 at 150 pixels per inch. Knowing that this is going to do 300, you could leave it 20 by 16. And then when you resize this, I mean, if you send it to a lab, it actually doesn't matter. They'll do the math for you. But if you uncheck the resample and then put this at 40 by 32, it'll leave it at 6,000 by 4,800 pixels. What you don't want to do is let's do that again. If you leave the resample on and you just tell it 40 by 32, and it's going to make it 12,000 pixels. So if you want to keep the actual file resolution the same, uncheck the resample, it'll leave it 6,000 pixels, and then you end up with 40 by 32 at 150 pixels an inch. So you might have to do a little bit of math to get what you want, but the layout designer can do it. All right, any more questions here? I don't see any more. If you guys have any more questions about the Layout Designer, go ahead and ask during the last video. For this one, in the files, if you downloaded, there's a folder called Memory Mate Template Setup, I think. And in that folder, there is a graphics file. If you want to follow along, you can open that because we're going to build a layout in a Memory Mate fashion with that graphics file. Or you can just watch it and then download the file and watch the replay later and follow along as well. All right, so go ahead and play that third video. In this lesson, we're going to be creating a Memory Mate template, and then we'll do a quick test to build the composites. You can open up the graphics file that is under the download under the Memory Mate template setup folder. That's the only file in this folder. I kept it generic just for this lesson. I just want to do something really simple here. And we're going to create slot 1 on the left as the featured slot, and we'll do an array of 12 images on the right side. And so this file here for the graphics file, I made 24 by 16. So in the Layout Designer, we will match that. I did this because I know some people have requested or asked about 3:2 aspect ratios. They want to print 8 by 12s. So as mentioned in the prior video, I like to build things larger because you can always print down, but you can't really print up without losing quality. So 24 by 16 will give us the same, it'll give us an 8 by 12 print with the proper aspect ratio. So the image ratio, that's the ratio, remember, of the image slots themselves. So we'll use 4:5 for the image slots that go into it. So for edge margins, we'll have to use custom because what we want to do is build an array of images off to the right. So I think I want to give this a little more margin top and bottom. Also on the right, 1.5 inches on a 24-inch print would be the same as 3/4 of an inch on a 12-inch print. So that sounds about right for this. Margins left. Now let's start with 10 and see how that looks. For text layers, I just want a full name. We'll have to make sure we start with slot 2 because we're only building the array of images. We're not putting in the featured slot yet. And then we're going to go 3 rows of 4. If you hit the fill rows with row 1 count, if you want to have all the rows the same number, whatever's in row 1, when you hit this, it's going to fill the rest of those in with that. So I can see my spacing here. My slots will be 1/4 of an inch apart, and my rows will be 0.4 inches apart. That seems reasonable. Let's hit a create layout preview. Actually, that looks like that might be about what we want. I'm going to do a copy merged and a paste in place just to see. So if you don't like something, so you can use this as a quick way to test to see what it will look like. I think I actually want to space that a little more. So let's go 11. I actually think I like the little closer to the right side, maybe. Nope. And again, I'm just looking at the spacing to see what looks about right. Let's hit create layout preview. I think something in there looks pretty decent. I'm not going to get too picky for this demonstration. You can go in and
fine tune yours as you want. I do think I actually, though, like this spacing a little bit better with the 1.5. All right, you might have to go through a couple of times on this to get just what you want. You can just play around and look at your numbers like I'm doing here. I don't know. I'm just going to go with that as my final answer, and we're going to build it. All right, so something like this, it looks okay. Maybe I could have went a little bit different on the margins, but we'll just leave it at this for now. So you see we started with slots 2 through 13. So now I want to add in a larger slot for slot 1 for the featured slot. So I'm going to hit add image slot. And for this, you got your options for your different sizes of smart objects. When it brings in your image slots, it automatically picks, and it picks the one that's not going to ever need to be upsized for your images, or it's going to pick the next largest smart object, so it always downsizes to fit the template and not upsizes. But in this case, we've got a larger spot, so I'm going to pick the 3000 pixel one, and we're going to go text layers full name. Just hit add image slot. And then we will move this where we want it. I don't know, I could spend more time getting everything lined up just like I want, but I am not going to, just for the sake of time here. Now what you can do as well, first thing we'll need to do is I'm going to move the slot one here. You could put it in another group and call it featured image or whatever. It really doesn't matter. It's functionally going to work the same. You just need to make sure that it gets under this easy comp -images folder is where you want it. But what you could do is you could pull in, oops, not what I wanted, it didn't copy. You could pull in your graphics file text just to see where that lines up, and you could line up your image to that or change that in your graphics file. It looks like it's fairly well lined up. I don't know, the snap's not actually really working perfectly here to want to know what to snap to, but that's fine. I'm just going to leave it as such. Of course, you'd want to spend more time on your own getting everything perfect like you want. But after we got the text in there, make sure you delete that out of there, because you want that in your graphics file. That way, if you make changes to it, you only have to do that in one place. All right, so that's it. That's our memory mate. So let's make sure when you save it, you're putting it in into the same folder as your graphics file. You can call it whatever you want in the beginning of the file name, but remember the end of the file name has to be easy comp, all caps, hyphen the number of images. So this 013 here, which it knew because the layout, actually, yeah, it knew that because when we built the layout, 13 was the last image. So it knew to automatically already add that for us. So that is it. And if you wanted to build multiple template files, you could, of course, delete some images, resave more template files, because remember the templates are going to be a collection of files. But for this demonstration, I'm not going to do that. So let's just close all these and build our memory mates. Before I do that, clear out this folder here. All right, so let's test this here. So we'll go to Build Composites. Now, since we're already on that folder, let me grab the template first. Grab that memory mate setup folder. Then this class has 13, so that will fit perfectly. Let's load our CSV file. Right, if we did everything right, this should work correctly. So you see it's put our text in. It's probably not exactly how I would align it up if I was creating a real file here, but since this is just a demonstration, it's good enough. All right, let's take a look at our folder here. These are the memory mates that we just built. So it looked like everything worked there. So that's basically it, but I do want to show you one other thing as well, because I think this could come in handy if you're making your own. So the templates that I make for memory mates, I usually do something a little bit different. You notice on these ones, let's just open a couple of these files here. Okay, when I build memory mates, if there's anything custom that's going to go into the first slot, like custom text and things that I know that the user may want to change, I like to put slot 1 in the graphics file instead of into the layout file. The layout file is going to still start with 2 for the spot on the right, but slot 1 is not in these layout files. So for this example, it starts with 2 down to 32, and the file is named 32. Because how Easy Composites works is when you build the composites, it's going to merge this graphics file into the layout file. So it's going to be a combination of these two. And by putting slot 1 in the graphics file, that way if you wanted to change a font or add some kind of custom borders to this image or whatever, you only have to do that once in the graphics file instead of having to edit that slot 1 featured in all of these layout files. So it makes it easier for editing. If you want to see the exact layout then that I do, how I do it, you'll need to purchase one of those memory mates that I've already created, which everything's set up and ready to run. So a lot easier to spend a few dollars and have this all set up. But if you want to make your own, it's certainly viable using the method that we just did here. But that's how I like to do my memory mates, like I say. But it's up to you how you want to do them. So we'll go to question and answers now, and I'll answer any other questions you have.
All right, welcome back, everyone. I'm going to go to Q&A here. I think I'll start with the easiest and work my way to the most difficult. So Brooke asks, we always use 3 to 4 aspect ratio. Is it possible to customize? Yes and no. Well, yes, but depends on how much work you want to do. So let me go to my screen share. So the first thing is, can you customize? The plugin will run with templates that are set up with any aspect ratio images. So for example, this Polaroid template is set up with 1:1 images. It will run those just fine. However, the layout designer will only build 4:5 or 5:7. So if you want to set your template up with other aspect ratios, it's a complete manual setup, which is obviously not what you probably want to do. It's a lot of work. So the other option is you can build your template with either 5:7 or 4:5 and let the software automatically crop your images. It's not going to stretch and distort the aspect ratio. So I've got a 3:4 aspect ratio here. If you don't have the ratio guides plugin, I suggest downloading that. This will show you how your images will crop in various aspect ratios. So if you build with 5:7 slots, it's just going to crop a little bit off of your 3:4 images when it places into the template. If you build with 4:5 slots, that would be 8:10, the same. You're going to crop top and bottom. So generally, it's better to crop left and right than top and bottom. I think that way you don't crop off the top of the hair potentially. So, and I don't think that the difference is too much on 5:7. So if it were me, I would build 5:7 templates and just deal with the cropping, because if you want to build a template with 3:4, it's going to be a lot of work to do. I didn't put that in there because it's not a common aspect ratio, and it's just a lot of work to build that into the layout designer. All right, let's go to the next question here. I gotta see. If I build a template with the lowest number of slots being 13, but my file only has 11 images, what happens? No, you don't need a template set up with every possible count, but your templates, you cannot feed it more files than your template has. So let's go back to the screen share. This is be easy to explain here if I can show you inside of Photoshop. Okay, well, this is, I guess, kind of a loaded question now that I think about it. So with the memory mates, if you are building a memory mate with everything pushed over to one side, then yeah, you have to have one for every slot combination, but usually these are only up to like 30 students anyway. If you're building a standard template where everything is centered, what's going to happen is when it builds, say you've only got 28 images, it will delete the final 3 slots when it builds. So if you only had 28 and your template had 31, and then it's going to center the bottom row for you. So for normal templates where everything is centered anyway, you can build a template, like say for 31, and you know you're okay down to 28. Then say you go to 27 and you want to start dropping some out the next row up, then you would need another one. So a lot of the templates that I release skip several slots per PSD, but the row centering centers to the whole template. So for memory mates, I guess you do have to have one for each individual slot. And I don't have anything on my desktop here that's not a memory mate to pull up, but like for the standard templates, like the vertical template, for instance, that comes like this, it skips quite a few of the PSD slots. Hope that answers that. All right, so where there is X's for the placeholder, can we change the name to like XXX school name? Yes, it works just like SPA, but there is something you do have to be careful with. I'll do my other screen share. Sorry, going back and forth between my screen shares here. It's probably better to just keep it on. All right, let's go back to Photoshop. All right, so what it does, it's going to work like sports photo automation. You're going to have your resize, your -R, or your resize maximum. So it's going to resize your new text to fit this. So for instance, resize maximum, if the text is too long, it's going to resize. So just make sure your text width is correct. The other thing you have to be careful with, I'll just change the text to make it make more sense here. So if you put it in like this, and then you say, okay, that's too wide, and then you, yeah, let's just do it like this. And then you decide to narrow it. Here, let me undo this here. There we go. I was hitting the wrong keys. So let's say if you you do that to narrow it and you change the aspect ratio of the font, when it goes in to replace the school name, even if it's a small name, you end up with that condensed font. So just make sure if you enter in something, you don't do that. So you'll want to get the width of that exactly as you want without scaling the font. I just used X's because it was easy, but if you want to change it, you can. Here. All right. Okay, so if you build in a template for all the students in the school with teachers appearing first and then all students according to grade, what's the process? That will be with a CSV file. All right, so you need to use the force order column. This can work for an entire school too. And if you're putting all the classes onto a single group, either make the group ID all the same. Actually, I think you would need, trying to think this through. Okay, if you don't run it in batch, it will allow you to select combine groups. But if you run as batch, you would need to have all these the same. So don't run as batch. I'll show you this in a minute here. Let's do this other part first. So the force order, this is simply a sorting function. And this doesn't necessarily correspond to slots. It's just going to sort the same way you would sort in Excel or any other spreadsheet. So you could put all your teachers with the number 1, for example. And so those would all sort to the front. Anything with the same number will then sort alphanumerically, first name and then, or last name and then first. So it would sort all of the teachers alphabetically. Then for your grades, so kindergarten, let's say we put 0. Then for second grade, we put 2. Or a fifth grade, or whatever grade you're having, 5. So when this sorts, actually, I take that back. If you want your teachers in front, since we kindergarten 0, this would have to be like maybe 0, 0 would sort in front of 0. I'm not 100% positive. You have to play with that. But no, it's not liking that. Anyway, you could have to think about that. I can get back to you on this and test it, but basically you need to put your numbers in and force them to sort by groups, and then anything with the same number gets sorted by name. And then when you run, so let's load in our data file. So make sure batch mode is off. And then when you hit build composite, if it sees that you have all those different groups assigned in your data file, if you hit combine all groups, it would put everything that's in the entire spreadsheet onto one composite. You just need to make sure that your layout file has enough slots to accommodate. Hope I answered that well. And I'll have to think about this for the, like I say, the kindergarten and faculty both being 0. You could always add 1 to the grade. So put 3 for second grade, 4 for third grade. Just make sure they sort as you want. All right, I don't see any more questions. Did you see anything more in the chat, Alyssa, while I was going through that?
Nope, they're all the same from earlier.
All right, thanks everybody for attending. Sorry for the technical difficulties, but at least we got through it. If you have any other questions, then just send me a message and I'll get back to you on those. We're out of here. Have a good one. Happy New Year.